Good morning. Good morning. Happy Wednesday. Happy Wellness Wednesday. I hope you are geared up for a fabulous day. If you are just stumbling on my page, my name is Donna. I am a mom, a nana, a significant other. I am a wellness advocate. I am a jazzerciser, which is why I look like this, because I just came from the 5:45 a.m. class. It's a fantastic way to get your day started. I own an online activewear boutique, and I am studying to be a personal trainer, amongst other things. Lots of irons in the fire. But one of my favorite things to talk about is wellness. I started Wellness Wednesday because I do believe that if we share things that have helped us to get past depression, anxiety, anything like that, that it's helpful, because what works for one person may or may not work for somebody else. And not only that, but oftentimes we hear the same things over and over and over again. I know that was the way it was for me all of our lives, but we should never want to stop listening to the positive things that help us, because even if it's something we've heard before over and over and over again, it's going to be just that right moment when we're ready to receive it that it really clicks. So sometimes, and I know for me, even if you've heard something 18 billion times, it may just be this one more time that it takes to really sink in. Good morning, Danielle. If you are here, let me know you're here. If you don't see this till afterwards, please let me know in the comments with a replay, a hashtag replay. That's very helpful to me. I like to see who's watching or who has watched after the fact. Okay, so last couple of weeks we did some lighter stuff, but today we are going to talk a little bit about depression. Now, we frequently, with wellness, good morning, Miss Carla. With wellness, there's a lot, it's a broad topic, y'all. It's a very broad spectrum thing, and a lot of things can be covered under that umbrella. However, we frequently end up talking about depression and anxiety for two reasons. One, that those are the most common ailments that most people experience, and they're also the subjects that I have the most personal experience with. It's so much more helpful when we can share our personal experiences, right? So I was asked recently what to do. What do you do when you think that a loved one may be experiencing depression? And it's an important question. It's a very, very good question. And let's talk about it, because while anxiety and depression do go hand in hand, depression can sometimes turn into something far more than what we are prepared for, right? So let's first talk about the differences between feeling down and a real serious depression, okay? So feeling down is a temporary thing. It's often triggered by an event, usually a more minor event. Something's not going right at work. You've gotten in an argument with a family member, and it doesn't interfere with your day-to-day function on a regular basis for an extended period of time, if that makes sense. Good morning, Chris. Nice to see you. So likely the person that is just feeling down temporarily. Hi, Victoria. Likely the person that's only feeling down temporarily, triggered by a specific event. It's only going to last for a few days, maybe a couple of weeks at the most. And this person is still going to be engaged in their favorite activities for the most part. They may take a couple of days off, but they're still going to be engaged in their favorite activities for the most part. And they're going to still demonstrate hope that things are going to get better. Okay, if that makes sense. Now, the other side of that is a more clinical depression. And not all levels are always considered clinical depression, but that's going to be more serious symptoms over a longer period of time, such as withdrawing from friends and losing interest in favorite activities. For a diagnosis, this is something that typically needs to be happening for at least 2 weeks minimum, and there's probably a significant drop in as compared to previous level of functioning. This individual that is clinically depressed, or maybe on the edge of it, good morning, Jackie, nice to see you, is going to demonstrate a more hopeless, nothing is going to change attitude. So there's a lot more differences, but those are the basic differences that make it kind of like, I know I can tell when I'm just down in the dumps for a few days, or if I'm on that edge of it turning into a more serious depression. but that comes from years of dealing with what is sometimes called a functional depression for actually most of my life. So I have learned over time to recognize when I might be getting into trouble and to do the things that I need to do to pull me back from that. And that y'all takes a lot of practice, and it's a daily thing forever. You never really truly, in my opinion, you never really truly recover from a true depression, especially if it's one that you've had for a lifetime. It's kind of like alcoholism with anxiety and depression. It takes daily practice. And that's not to say you can't get better, because you can get better, but you still have to be aware of the things that you know you need to do to maintain that homeostasis, if you will. So what are the signs of depression? You probably think you know, and most of us do know, but again, the more we hear some of this repeated, the more it tends to stick, right? So signs of depression are feelings of sadness, emptiness, or loneliness, an unusual level of frustration or anger over small things. So I can remember one time completely flipping out over a wooden spoon in the sink. And my husband at the time was like, "What is wrong with you? Because this can't be about the spoon." And let's face it, rarely ever is it about the wooden spoon in the sink, right? So unusual level of frustration or anger over small things. One of my favorite things to say is, it's bad when you're getting on your own nerves. Change in sleeping habits. That's huge. Now that can mean a lot more sleep. That can mean a lot less sleep. I am more of one to not want to get out of bed, when I'm struggling, with depression, or fighting it. I tend to just want to I tend to be frozen to the bed, struggle to get up in the morning type thing. If anything, I sleep more. But some people sleep less. They develop insomnia when they're dealing with depression. So any kind of major change in sleeping habits, changes in appetite, same thing. Some people eat more, they comfort eat, and others don't eat at all because they're having physical symptoms, of like nausea and stomach issues, gastro issues, because those are physical manifestations of the depression. And sometimes, honestly, there are times where people don't eat because they're punishing themselves. If their depression is related to something they think they've done wrong, or a feeling of worthlessness, oftentimes eating or lack of eating can be more of a control factor. If they feel like their life is out of control, that's something they feel like they can control, if that makes sense. So changes in appetite, higher than usual anxiety or restlessness. Good morning, Miss Stacy. How are you today? Higher than usual anxiety or restlessness. Again, depression and anxiety tend to come hand in hand. And as one goes up, the other goes down, is what was explained to me by a counselor I saw years ago. And I found that to be true with myself. As I started to get my depression under control, my anxiety and irritability levels tended to come up. And while I'm totally not a confrontational person, I had a couple of moments where I was fairly confrontational during that time. So higher than usual anxiety or restlessness, difficulty concentrating, remembering, decision making. If that person just doesn't seem capable of making a decision, if you find that they're forgetting a lot of things, they seem scatterbrained, that can be, good morning, Miss Marie, that can be a symptom of many of these can be symptoms of many different things. But when you put a lot of these together, they can definitely be indicators of depression. Rumination or feelings of excessive guilt or worthlessness. Rumination means that you're spending a lot of time repeating back over in your mind or verbally, even out loud, things that you've done wrong, negative things that have happened in the past, things you wish you could change. That's what falls under rumination. And a lot of times that's what depression comes from. There's a saying that says that depression is living in the past, worrying about the past, and anxiety is worrying about the future. So essentially not present, spending a lot of time thinking about things that have happened that can't be changed and how you wish you could change them, or feeling guilty about something you've done in the past, or general feelings of worthlessness. So if your loved one, whether it be a child, whether it be a close friend, whether it be a significant other, a parent even, if there's a lot of expression of, I can't do this, I'm not capable, I'm not a good person, things like that, that may be a solid indicator that they are in or headed towards a depression. Good morning, Miss Robin. I have a couple of notes from a website that I looked at on my computer. So if you see me looking to the side, that's what I'm doing, because there are some specific manifestations in children versus women versus men. Okay. So with children, this website, and if you want the link, feel free to message me and I'll send it to you. This website indicates that emotional changes in children may look more like emotional or behavioral changes. Children with depression may become more irritable or easily annoyed. And I found this very interesting. Sometimes depression can masquerade as attention deficit disorder. And this is primarily because depression can cause children to have trouble thinking, concentrating on tasks, making decisions, or remembering topics or tasks. Now, kids are kids anyway, so sometimes they tend to be all over the place. But if this is something that seems to be happening that wasn't happening before, then that may be an indicator that your child's fighting with depression. I made a reference a little bit ago to my lifelong functional depression, which I had come to think was just part of my personality. And there's a strong possibility that I was experiencing some kind of depression as far back as 3.5-ish, where I have a memory of my father leaving when my mother and my father split up. So that's kind of scary, and that's a story for another day, because I think things like this at that time weren't recognized as easily in children as they may be now. So women, signs of depression in women may manifest a little bit differently than children or men, because a lot of times depression in women comes with hormone changes. PMS, hormone changes as a teenager, as they're going through puberty, hormone changes with menopause as something that I've experienced, as I think I'm about 5.5 years past now. But I still experience some ups and downs. And I find recently more frequently than I used to. So again, that can just be continued hormone changes or drops in my body. Women may also experience depression during their cycle. It says during menopause, after the birth of a child. We all have heard of postpartum depression. And a lot of times with women, this looks more like sadness, helplessness, a decreased libido, and digestive issues. So again, increased appetite, trouble sleeping, so changes. And now that sounds pretty normal to us. In men, it sometimes looks even different still. Men have a tendency it comes out more as anger or aggression, believe it or not, which sounds almost more like the anxiety side that we talked about. And again, change in sleeping patterns, disinterest in work or hobbies can also be telltale signs. Men happen to show more physical symptoms of depression than women often do. And that is in the form of increased heart rate, chest pain, headaches, or again, digestive issues. And then of course, with elderly people, that's a whole different animal, but I don't want to stay on this too long because I want to talk about what your role can be in helping if you think that your loved one is suffering from depression. So the first thing to do is to have and I'm going to move another window over here in case I need to make a reference back to it, is to have a non-judgmental conversation with them. What does that mean? That means you can express that you've observed some changes, but be cautious not to be critical. It is very easy to say, oh, well, that's what's bothering you. Susie over here had that problem and she got through it, no problem. You shouldn't be depressed about that. That's a huge no-no. And that's what I mean by non-judgmental discussion. You don't want to judge that person for however they're feeling. So you might just say, hey, let's just say it's your best friend and you think that they are, which that could be your loved one, that could be a relative, that could be anybody, but whoever it is, you may say to them, hey, you don't seem like yourself lately. You seem a little stressed out. I've noticed some changes. Is everything okay? Is there anything I can help you with? Is there anything you'd like to talk about? Do not, under any circumstances, be critical of whatever reasoning they may give you for how they're feeling. That's extremely important, because it may seem small to you, especially with kids. It may seem small to you, but it may seem big to the person experiencing it. And there may be other things attached, but until you open carefully that line of communication, you're not going to find that out. You need to make them, whether it's an adult or a child, it's important to make them feel safe, and that you are not going to judge them for expressing how they feel. And that's a good way to open the conversation. Hey, it seems like you might be struggling a little bit with this. With an adult, you can say, hey, I noticed you've been sleeping a lot more. Is everything okay? Are you feeling all right? Or, hey, I've noticed that you don't seem to want to, you were going to the gym every day, you were going to jazzercise every day, and you haven't been doing that lately, and you really seem to love it. Is everything okay? Those are the kinds of questions, non-judgmental, opening the conversation, kind of open-ended questions to see if you can draw them out and get them talking. You can suggest a doctor visit, again, if they're not feeling themselves or if they're a little extra stressed out. Do they need to see the doctor? Now, remember that there is still, for some people, very much a stigma attached to mental health, or feeling like you need a therapist or a counselor, although it's becoming much more widely accepted. There's still very much a stigma in some people's minds, especially people like my age and older, because we lived with that. So we grew up with that stigma that was attached to it. So we are still going to be more hesitant to admit that we might be experiencing something that we need to see a psychologist or a therapist or a counselor for. So sometimes this can look like, hey, do you need to go see your general practitioner? Good morning, Miss Caitlin. That might be a start. And again, you need to match their language. If they're saying they're just feeling a little stressed out or they're not feeling themselves, that's the language you should reflect, because depressed is not necessarily a word they're going to recognize in that situation, even though those things can often mean the same thing. So maybe suggest a doctor visit. You know, if you're not feeling yourself, when was the last time you saw the doctor? And here's a place where if they are feeling overwhelmed by that or they don't seem sure, you can offer to help them. You can say, hey, is it helpful if I make the appointment for you? Would it make you feel better if I went with you? Those are ways that you can offer help and you can offer support, again, without coming across as judgmental, but more as encouraging. Hey, it might be good for you to do this. How can I help you get there? It doesn't necessarily, if they seem like they're funny about the word depression or the word counselor or the word therapist, or you get greeted with a, oh, so you think I'm crazy, or you think you're going to get greeted with an, oh, so you think I'm crazy, because I have seen that happen personally, and I've maybe even reacted that way myself, then that might be where encouraging them to go see their regular practitioner, where they might feel safer having this conversation. The practitioner might pick up on it and make a referral, might be the better way to go. So you can also offer to help with overwhelming tasks. If this individual, if your child seems very overwhelmed by cleaning their room, maybe you can help them, not do it for them, but help them. Maybe you can help them by choosing one section of the room at a time per day or whatever. Say, how about we just work on this for right now? If it's an adult, if they seem overwhelmed with daily activities, ask if you can help them. Maybe it's something as simple as taking care of the laundry for them to take that off their plate. If they're struggling at work, can you help more at home to help offset that? Another way is to encourage activity that doesn't necessarily mean they have to get social. If they're struggling with depression, they may not want to be social, but another way to show support, for example, if it's your husband or your wife, hey, let's go for a walk, and start trying to get that person out for a walk with you. It's great bonding time for the two of you, and that exercise, a 20 or 30-minute walk, can get those endorphins going and help with receptors and, start the rewiring process. So encourage them to do activities that give them personal satisfaction. If they haven't completely withdrawn yet, but they feel overwhelmed by everything they're doing, if they like to volunteer, maybe you can suggest they volunteer. If there's somebody that's in the house all the time, maybe they're working from home. I know that I work from home now, and I could go days without leaving the house and be totally okay with it. But I also know that at some point I have to force myself to leave the house and go out and interact with other people besides my boyfriend, because otherwise that could snowball on me. So you don't want to force them by scheduling social activities, but you can be supportive and make suggestions such as, let's go for a walk. Maybe would you like to volunteer somewhere? It kind of depends on where your conversation is at that point. You should never, ever, ever schedule in a situation like this. If you think your loved one is suffering from depression, never, ever, ever schedule social activities without their permission. Because if they're struggling, especially if they're struggling with any kind of social anxiety, and you may not know that yet, and they're withdrawing from people because they're feeling ashamed or worthless, you don't want to force them into a situation where they have to socialize. It may not be the best choice. For me, I know when to force myself into it. And I'm very, very fortunate that my boyfriend knows. He can kind of tell when I'm having an off time, and I can look at him and I can say, it's fine, just let me be for a bit. And I go retreat to my very large closet, or I can go retreat to my camper outside if I just need to be by myself. He doesn't try to force me into anything, and that's huge, especially in a situation like this. So try to open the lines of dialogue. If you are very concerned, and there's those comments of worthlessness and helplessness are happening, then it may be time. And if this is a close friend, you may not have the option of doing this because the doctor may not talk to you. But if it's a significant other, like a spouse, boyfriend, girlfriend, or a child, if you're seeing a lot of this, feelings of helplessness, and there's the signs of a definite dissension into a full-blown depression are there, and you can't get that person to open up to you, it may be time to make a phone call to their doctor and give their general practitioner, primary care physician a heads up and say, hey, my husband, my wife this is what I'm seeing, and I'm concerned, but I'm not able to get that person to open up to me. And there may be some suggestions or some actions the doctor can take or suggest that you take to help you. If you're hearing comments regarding suicide, and this is the important part, and then I'll wrap it up, because you guys know when it comes to stuff like this, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a licensed therapist yet, but there's certain things I'm always going to tell you, go seek professional help. If you are hearing comments about suicide, or maybe I should just not even be around, don't assume that that's for attention, okay? Don't assume that somebody's doing that for attention or validation, especially in this day and age. Those should never be taken lightly. If you're starting to wonder if you should put things that can be used as weapons away, where that individual is concerned, or anything like that, then you absolutely must talk to that person's doctor. And if it appears that you actually need to take action where there looks like there's some pill hoarding going on, I mean, these are pretty serious situations. If that person is starting to give away things, there are signs of someone that's seriously having suicidal thoughts. If they're starting to give away prized possessions, if they're starting to make arrangements for their end of life, although we all should do that to some degree, but if it's above and beyond the norm, and if they're talking about things of that nature, then it may be an emergency situation, and therefore time to get their doctor, or maybe even law enforcement or somebody from a suicide crisis center involved. Okay. So that's very general information. I hope you find that helpful. A lot of people just don't know what to do in a situation like that. And there's a lot of other information out there. And the couple of links that I worked with on this particular issue, I'm happy to send you. Also happy to always send, and I'll drop a link for it. The American Psychological Association has an extensive website. They are the authors of the DSM-5, which is the current psychology The current approved mental illness and disorder diagnostic manual. I know I'm not saying that right, y'all. I'm still drinking my lemon water and recovering from jazzercise. I'm happy to drop that link in the comments. If you want these other links that I worked with today, there's 2 specific ones. Send me a message and I'll send you those links. And if you found this helpful or you think it might help somebody else, definitely, please, I encourage you to share. And if you have some suggestions, feel free to drop them in the comments. Specific things to look for. If you have some personal experience in this department, I would be more than happy to hear those. And I'm sure anybody else watching would be more than happy to see or hear those. So appreciate all of you for joining me today. I hope you find this helpful. Again, if you do, or if you know of somebody that you think, and if you are thinking of somebody that might need to hear this and you don't want to tag them in the comments or share it to their wall where everybody in the free world can see it, remember that you can often share things like this to Messenger. When you hit the share button, you have the option of sending it in Messenger to that person. And then that way it's a private conversation between the two of you and nobody ever has to know that you shared with that individual. So keep that in mind because sometimes this can be a very sensitive subject. Okay. I hope you all have found value in this. I hope you all have a fabulous, fabulous Wednesday. Be well. And I will see you next Wednesday, if not before. Bye.